Thank you all for coming. It's great to see you. So tonight, I'd like to tell you about my love affair with Japanese paper, also known as washi, and how it led me to something magical. In 1979, I came to Japan with a backpack, a one-way ticket, and wanderlust. I had just graduated from Connecticut College with a BA in studio art. I was a young artist wanting to see more of the world. Hitchhiking around Japan, I got as far as Kyoto, the cultural heart of Japan. I set up a little studio in a 4.5 mat room and started to go outside to sketch my surroundings. My earliest works were black and white and reminiscent of an earlier time in Kyoto. This photo is from the turn of the century and shows the Nishijin dyers of Kyoto rinsing their works in the Horikawa River. I would live in this neighborhood for close to 10 years. The river is no longer used by the dyers, but many craftspeople have their workshops in the area. I had trained in painting and printmaking and had some knowledge of etching. Because of the difficulty of the language, I decided to continue with the medium I was familiar with. My first print was an etching called Kisaten, the inside of a small tea shop in my immediate neighborhood. I felt safe inside this spot and could look out through the architecture to the new world around me. I made pencil sketches for the plates there and then etched the plate inside my little kitchen, a 1/2 sized tatami room. I continued to etch in black and white, inspired by the world around me. This is Snow Gust from 1983. Growing up in Rochester, New York, I have an affinity for snow. Kyoto snow usually falls in the early morning and melts by noon. The narrow streets and distant hills were right outside my door. This print is called Kurodani, referring to a temple on the eastern slope of Kyoto. It was printed on copper with the snow created by dropping talcum powder onto the plate. It was the beginning step of me adding touches to the prints, which would make each one unique. Kyoto is a city that reveals itself slowly, layer by layer. Night rituals abound, and so when I was out viewing them, I often gathered images for new prints. This is Blue Kyoto from 1987. It's an early nighttime image along the Kamo River, where I often cycled. It is an aquatint with woodblock additions. The summer fires on the 5 surrounding mountains of Kyoto are unique. They welcome the spirits of the ancestors back for the Obon weekend in August. This fire is the character for Dai, meaning large. It can be seen from many areas in the city. The stark light in an otherwise field of black is the inspiration for my Luminosity Series. Here is the moon appearing as a crescent, which looks to me almost like a character. It's part of a work called Crescent Glow, a moon floating in the dark sky. By 1984, I moved into color aquatint with the help of New York printer Kathy Caraccio. Kathy taught me the nuances of printing à la poupée, a technique developed by printers in the Impressionist era in France, where different parts of the plate are inked with beautiful color blends. The print Day Glow is from 1984 and depicts New York City at dawn and is in several public collections. In 1986, while visiting New York to work on print editions, I had a moment which changed my life. I wanted to make paper to print on, and so I went to visit a paper studio in Soho. As I watched the paper process before me, I thought, why make sheets to print on when this is a medium to paint with? That's what I should be doing in Japan, painting in paper. I flew back to Kyoto, intent on finding a place to experiment with handmade Japanese paper as an art form. The very next week, upon the introduction of my local paper shop proprietor in Kyoto, I went to the 800-year-old papermaking village of Imadate. Imadate is in Echizen and is part of Fukui province near the Japan Sea. It's about 2.5 hours from where I live. It's home to 90 papermaking related families, most of whom work in small studios. The Otaki Shrine is a masterpiece of shrine architecture. It is dedicated to the goddess of papermaking. A text records the making of paper in Echizen from 774 AD. As a Japanese craft, washi is registered by the government as an intangible cultural heritage. Otaki Shrine was reconstructed 25 years ago by local craftsmen. This is the entrance to the shrine. At the Taki paper mill, I was introduced to the Taki family of papermakers, whom I have worked with ever since. This picture was taken in 1988. As you can see, the team is all women who do most of the hand papermaking at this mill, which specializes in large paper for doors. Most of the women joined the paper studio after high school and worked until retirement at 65. Fusuma paper doors, which are what this picture is of, adorn an entrance in Kyoto. This is the size of the paper typically made at the Taki mill. Japanese washi is unique because it is made from plant fibers. This is kozo, also known as paper mulberry. It is grown as a bush and is a renewable resource. A second fiber called mitsumata is a type of daphne or Edgeworthia chrysantha. The inner bark of the plant is used for paper. Here it is blooming in the spring with a wonderful fragrance. Other fibers called asa or linen to the left and gampi to the right are also used. The branches are boiled and stripped of their outer bark and then dried. Then they are boiled with lye to remove the starch, fat, and tannin, then rinsed in running water to remove the lye. The fibers may be bleached either by water, the sun, or chemically, and all impurities are taken out by hand. Washi is considered a renewable resource. If you look at this picture, you can see it compared to wood pulp. Only the branches of the kozo tree are cut for paper fiber and then regenerate a year later. The fiber is long, silky, feathery, and resilient. It has an inherent beauty unique to the material. Women in the mill process the long fibers that become paper by hand, tearing them into even lengths so that they flow consistently. Here's an example of a mulberry paper with short and long fibers. It is this contrast and variety of application that initially drew me to the material. The left side has an etching printed on it. The screens which the washi is poured onto are made of silk and are coated with persimmon juice to make them impervious to water. Teamwork is part of the process of making large sheets. This method uses a large boat of fiber to rock the screen back and forth in. Washi paper is strong because the layers are created this way and thus interlock. Drying the paper is done on smooth ginkgo boards by 2 skilled craftsmen. Current practices are not too different from those of the Edo period, several hundred years ago. My early paperworks explored texture and scale in landscape. Biwako Blue, which was created in 1988, was exhibited in a show at Byodoin Temple as part of Kyoto's 1200-year anniversary in 1993. I was challenged to work larger than before. This photo was taken under a temple eave, and so it was exhibited outside for 5 days. Spreading the fibers onto the screen is a tactile experience, and I often use my hands to spread the fiber as if it's paint. Color and contrast were my interests in Katsura squares, made in 2010. This piece was commissioned for a restaurant in Oakland, California. Stepping Stones from 2007 is exhibited in this show. The stones, which are part of a Japanese garden design, lead the viewer into the image, into a new dimension, which has a whimsical element, as if one was dropping into a vast expanse of clouds. These are 2 other works from the same series. These 2 works incorporate printed aquatints in oval shapes that are embedded into the wet washi. Moonlight and the night sky are themes that followed me into the medium. Blue Crescent is a 4-paneled paperwork with aquatint embedded into the wet paper. The 2 panels in the middle hold the print. The fibers are poured to swirl and imitate the night sky. A large crescent moon is then added over the printed aquatints. It was shown in an exhibit called Celestial Threads at the Asian Art Museum in 2015. The textiles are by Jory Johnson, a felt artist in Kyoto. Light is the unifying theme in my work, but I wondered, could I take it a step further and make works that were self-illuminating? About this time, I learned about phosphorescent pigments that could hold a charge of light when exposed to daylight. Could I add these special pigments directly to the Japanese paper and make art in which light was coming from within. I was excited to try. The first tests in the dark looked promising. These are the first prototypes lying on my studio floor. I gazed at them from above, looking for where the moonlight was coming from. From this point, I started exploring the artistic possibilities of luminosity. Could I make works that express this inner light, and would others be moved as I would? This is a short video showing the work in the Luminosity series.
Imagine an art exhibition beginning in a darkened room. Our eyes search to find edges in the darkness that explains the imagery. There is mystery and a glow coming from the art itself. These works look completely different in the light, as if they were two different works altogether. This is the luminescent washi paperworks of artist Sarah Brayer.
One of the things to me that's interesting about this work is that I'm basically creating works that will be seen in two completely different situations. One is in daylight, which is the state where I'm creating it, and the other is at night.
In her latest series, Luminosity, Brayer has created washi paperworks that incorporate photoluminescent pigments into the light areas of the image. Excited by exposure to sunlight, these unique paperworks have an afterglow of several hours in the dark. Sarah Brayer has worked in the historic Washi Paper Center of Echizen, Japan, since 1986. She works in this 800-year-old village, home to living national treasure papermakers.
I'm very fortunate to work in one of the paper studios in this historic village. What originally drew me to washi as a medium was its very fluid and dynamic quality. When I first went into the paper mill and saw the size of the screens, immediately knew that this was the place that I wanted to work. I think about how to create the feeling of a light that's coming from within. One of the beauties of using the luminescent pigments is that the light is right in the washi. This is the first step of making from the seed to the stars. So you can see there's a lot of fluid that collects as I'm pouring the fiber. And then that fiber drains to the screen. And I can do this a number of times until I build up the color that I'm after. This was the initial drawing made out of kozo fiber and phosphorescent pigment. I dried it on a screen and took it with me to place in the work. So there it is drying outside, and as it dries, it will become more stiff and easy to handle. And this to me was a way that I could use the fiber to make a drawing-like line in the wet material. I was inspired by patterns I saw on a trip to Namibia and a sea of rock paintings depicting animals. I embedded the washi drawing into a field of colored paper fiber. It went through many steps, and the circle gradually became a spiral with constellations shooting out from the center. So often when I start a piece, I have a germ of an idea, but it takes on more complexity as I work. After completion, the screen is moved onto a stack and cooched onto a cotton sheet. Here's a short clip of that. So this is incredibly heavy. You can't tell these are master craftspeople who do this every day, but it weighs about 50 pounds. And then the screen is removed and taken back to the table setup where I start my next piece. Here's the finished work showing the constellations spilling out from the spiral. I added a bit of gold leaf to the center of the image and in a few small places just to give it some contrast. Another luminescent work called Oceanic Moon went with me to China, where I did a fellowship in 2011. We hung it in a small gallery, which is an old garage, on the night of the September Moon Festival in China. Villagers from Mutanyu, the local village near the Great Wall, came to see the work. It now resides in the Johnson Museum at Cornell in their collection. Okay, we have another short video about luminosity and how I began the series. This film was made by Ellie Ebby, my niece. Karmic Threads is the most recent work in this exhibition. Has a dimensional quality. Some of the pieces extend out from the image. And this little clip is just to show you the dimension of the piece. It combines an abstract composition with fan-shaped papers and a figure passing through. The red line represents the karmic thread. This work was made in my Kyoto studio using collage techniques. It's part of my Red Thread series, inspired by a passionate use of red as an accent in Japan. Inside a kimono, the red line appears as a subtle hint. Tengujo paper is also made from kozo. It comes in 9 different thicknesses and is used by conservators for mending art pieces, etc. Layered Moonlight, which is also in the show, has 3 layers of Tengujo paper that move over the image. The color gradations of indigo were made by brushing dye onto the wet paper. In the exhibition, you may view the work in a video that shows the air moving the layers. We have it framed in the exhibition, so there's no air entering the frame. It also has a presence at night. And is related to a series I made called Moving Layers. This is a piece called Gossamer from 2017. Creating doors for a temple named Komyo-in in Kyoto was my most recent large project. The upper right shows the temple room with white doors before I made the screens, while the bottom image is the completed work, and the left top image, or the right top image, is the mounter bringing the screens into the temple. The images had to flow together as one, and the abbot of the temple gave me free rein over the imagery, but requested the feeling of water to enhance the rock garden outside. So when I made this piece, I actually made 16 works, and then out of the 16 chose the final composition, because I found that my sketch was not really adequate, and I was not happy with the final results. So I ended up changing the composition and adding more space to it. Other works were made in the Waterfall series. And these are hanging in my studio in Kyoto, not mounted as doors, but as singular pieces. This is called Beneath the Falls. And the piece behind it is, on the far wall, is Falling Water. And you can see it's the same color scheme. I use the same fibers that I used to make the doors. This is a diptych called Cascade, and to the right is a work called Dragon's Eye. This is a piece called Hidden Falls, and I mounted it as a folding screen, which also opens onto the wall, becomes a flat piece. And it was exhibited last month in New York at Ronin Gallery in their contemporary arts show. I also sometimes make editions using washi, and in this case, silk screen. This edition was called Crescent Glow, and you saw the moon in the earlier slide floating in the sky. Here I am adhering the moons made out of phosphorescent washi using what's called a hitting brush. So they're all lined up in the silkscreen studio. In Japan, they silkscreen in a line like this. The printer moves down the line with the screen. And so I thought this was really amazing to see an edition laid out like this. It's kind of like being in a space capsule or something. So after all the moons were adhered, it came back to my studio for signing. And this piece went, it was the patron's print for the New York Print Club in 2017. So it was an edition of 200, which is a lot more than usually made. Most recently, I've been printing on washi from wood blocks. I'm utilizing the grain in the wood to create subtle images on an open weave kind of paper. I like to use the gaps in the paper as a way of seeing through to a layer underneath. My most recent series is called the Burst Series. It began in the spring when the colors were emerging. I used the abstract qualities of washi paper to create numerous woodblock prints and then layered them together to create the feeling of radiant light. Kyoto continues to inspire me. From outside my studio to inside our garden. Temple pathways like my favorite at Daitokuji Temple. Light and shadows. The seasonal changes that I see around me. The vast sky and shades of blue. And the sea below and above. Innovative designs. And a great attention to detail. Working with a team of paper makers and printers links me to a long tradition that crosses cultures and oceans. I feel blessed by the support that I have received in Japan and from you in enabling me to show my work to a public audience in Oberlin. Thank you very much.